Welcome back to Formula for Average. Let's discuss the Miami Grand Prix. And I didn't think that it would be so entertaining as it actually turned out, because there were a lot of things that happened which made the race actually very interesting. So, without further ado, let's discuss those interesting things. And of course, the first thing that needs to be discussed is the race start. Again, unfortunately, bad start. Well, relatively bad start for Kimi Antonelli. But what was interesting to hear is that also Toto Wolff, after the race, said that in the sprint and now also in the main race, it was not Kimi's fault. It is basically the Mercedes which needs to figure out the start. And this is interesting because to me, what I don't understand fully, or of course I'm not an F1 engineer or anything, but if McLaren, who is also using Mercedes power unit, can do a great start, and as we saw also in the main race when Norris took the lead, they can do a great start, but Mercedes with their own power unit cannot do it. And this is the mind-boggling thing for me. And apparently it's a setup or how you use the power unit rather than if the power unit is capable of doing that. So this is the interesting start, the interesting thing out of the race start. Of course, race start was bad for Antonelli. However, it was great for again for Leclerc and Norris, which eventually took the lead. So in that sense, Ferrari still have a great start. Also, actually, Hamilton had a decent start. Unfortunately, then he got tangled up in the in all of these shenanigans. So with Max Verstappen spinning out. And hats off to Verstappen that he was able to do 360 in the middle of what was it, second corner or whatever, and still hold it together and do not crash in the first lap when you have cars everywhere. And of course, also Gasly said that he had to brake and then he fell back, and due to that he got into fight with who was it? Lawson, and then eventually came together and crashed out. But nevertheless, a lot of happened, and kudos to everyone that they didn't make a big pile of car wrecks when Verstappen spun out. So that was that made the start interesting. And then of course how the race developed. I guess the big point here is. Mercedes won with their strategy. They do not have great starts, but they still have a great strategy. And McLaren, unfortunately, in this case, lost out. And also Norris, after the race, said that, well, we just didn't do a correct pit stop. They were undercut, and that's it. They had to be more aggressive with the strategy in order to win this race, and they didn't do it. So Antonelli took the lead. But I must also admit that it's surprising to see that driver that young. It's not even driver. It's just in general how people develop and how they mature. And being at 19 years old to make such a big and good decisions, not to make any mistakes under pressure when you have like half of the distance, because the pit stops, what was it? It happened 22nd lap or something like that, and basically after that the half of the race distance, Norris was on the tail, or as they say, on the back of Antonelli, and Antonelli didn't make any mistakes, and that's also what Norris said after the race, like Antonelli didn't make a big enough mistake for me to capitalize on it, right? So Antonelli, with being such a young driver, such an unexperienced driver, basically doing such a good job when being in the lead, It's surprising to see. I'm very hopeful that this will continue throughout the year and that he will continue this kind of a streak. And this particular track, Miami, of course, let's say it's not, I don't know if it is anyone's favorite track, but for sure it's not Russell's favorite track, and he has said it multiple times. And I think even this time he said that this track is, he just wants to forget about this weekend. Going next to Canada, which is Russell's one of the favorite tracks. We'll see how the pendulum swings, and if in Canada still Antonelli can prove that he can beat Russell, or he can be very close to Russell. Let's say I don't know, second place, and assuming that Russell wins the race. Of course, we don't know, but then we can talk about, I think, very firmly that Antonelli is serious contender of the drivers' championship. Of course, it's still early. This was only the fourth race of the year. However, Antonelli now has three race wins in a row, and he's leading the championship, and you can't deny that. He's driving at the moment very good. He's doing everything he needs in order to become more stronger, to develop more experience, to become even more reliable. And if Mercedes, not Antonelli, but if Mercedes can fix their race starts, it will be hard to stop them. On that note, I must say that I'm very surprised and very glad to see, as it seems, that McLarens are back. Back meaning that last year they were the absolute favorites and they win the championship without any problems. This year they had a very bad start of the year, as we know. There was even a case when both cars didn't start the race. So that's why they are, let's say, on the back foot. And looking also at the total numbers of race of victories and total numbers in the championship, they are still behind. However, this weekend in Miami, after this break, 5-week break, showed that they have done serious developments. And this is very encouraging if we look at the long run. And Norris and Piastri, they said themselves, and in the sprint they were very good, very competitive. In the main race, they did everything, almost everything, except let's say, being more aggressive with the strategy. And they did everything to win the race. So, I think, so it seems that in the beginning of the year, it seemed that it will be between Mercedes and occasional Ferrari win. Now it starts to look like that it's more like Mercedes or McLaren, and even maybe not occasional. Yet again, that being said, Mercedes are bringing big upgrades for Canada. At least that's what they say. So maybe they again will be step ahead. I don't know. However, at the moment, it seems that McLaren has caught up, and they are able to bring the fight to Mercedes, which is, of course, for us as viewers, very great to see. So that's about Mercedes, that's about McLaren. I think, what else? Russell, I already mentioned, not his favorite track. He was decent, but nowhere close to being a contender for a win. Verstappen is interesting because also, if we look at if we look at Red Bull, then they have also made a big step forward, and Max seems to be more happy with the car. Yes, the race didn't go his way. He made a mistake in the first lap. Then he tried to fight back. Eventually fought up to P5 because of the mistake of Leclerc, and we get to Leclerc a little bit later. Overall, I think they are closer than they were, because they were, let's face it, based on the standards of Red Bull, they were far behind. They are closer, and probably occasionally they could challenge for a race win or more frequent podiums. But at the moment, still, I think they are lacking in general. Teammate of Verstappen, Hajar, made a mistake, crashed out himself, was very frustrated about it. Well, things happen, and that's what it is. Ferrari, Hamilton took P6 in the race, Leclerc eventually P8 because he got a penalty. And I think for Leclerc, the last lap or last 2 laps, this is something he wants to forget about. Basically, yeah, he was I think P4 would be a comfortable finish for him. He fought with Russell. He was what was it? No, he was P3. Yes, then Piastri overtook him, and then also Russell. But basically chasing Piastri, Leclerc made a mistake. He spun out, hit the wall, damaged probably the front suspension, and then he sort of limped back to the race finish. While doing that, he sort of cut some corners, and because of cutting these corners after the race, it was ruled that he will receive 20-second penalty, which ultimately brought him back to P8. So he finished P8 after Franco Colapinto. And here we come to Colapinto, and I think one of the best races, if not the best race of his career. And Alpine taking P7, taking and grabbing some valuable points. So Alpine looks more and more comfortable and more competitive. And yes, Gasly crashed out because of Lawson's, transmission failure, I think. He explained it like that. So basically, Lawson's transmission failed in the moment when he was fighting with the position of Gasly, and then he could not brake with the engine because he lost gears. So he was in neutral. What the word? I can't pronounce it. Anyways, and he was not in gear and could not stop and crashed into Gasly, and Gasly even had the roll and crashed out, and Lawson then later also DNF'd with some damage. So yeah, unfortunate for Gasly because Alpine was really competitive in this track, and hopefully they will be more competitive in the future races as well. Hats off also, let's say, a small improvement for Williams. I think we didn't see the Williams at all during this race because everything was about Lando and Kimi fighting out, and then some other fights there. But actually, P9 and P10 for Williams is a I would say very decent result for them. And they qualified P14 and P16 and finished P9, P10. So I think respectable result. Of course, would we like to see them more up in the order, closer to podium? Yes, but the reality at the moment is that their car is still overweight. They still are fighting with some issues. They have the most powerful power unit, which is Mercedes, but their chassis is bad at the moment. So they need to fix this in order to be more competitive, and hopefully they will do this throughout the year. But we must remember that other teams are also developing, so it will be very hard. But we'll see what's next there. So yeah, I think those are the main things. Not to spend more time on this. I think those are the main things what happened, and overall, I think it was a interesting race, as I said, very competitive, and there was, let's say, fights until the very last lap, which is actually the thing that we as fans and as viewers, this is what we want to see. eventually from Formula One. And let's address this rule changes. Have they fixed the racing? I think not entirely, but they are the steps in the right direction, because we didn't see these yo-yo overtakes anymore as much. There were a couple, but they were not like ping pong back and forward, right, or yo-yo. They were not, and in overall, I think that the racing was much more better, and it was much more interesting to watch. And the drivers were not so did not rely so much on this boost or whatever. They had to they still have to manage the power, and they still have to manage the energy, but it was not like ping-ponging back and forth all the time. So I think that's the very essence, and more relied on driver's skill, management of the car, management of the tires, and yes, also management of the power delivery, but it was less important. That's what it felt like from watching this. So I think those rule changes, what they have done, are in the correct direction. So that's about the race. Let's take a look at the championship. So how does it look now? Still Antonelli leading, of course. He took the win here, so he's still leading, and George Russell in the second place, trailing 20 points. So not the best weekend for Russell, but still respectable amount of points. So he's a little bit falling back, but still it's 20 points. So one race win, it can all be different. So yeah. Then Leclerc comes in third. There the difference is a little bit more, like 21 more points down. Then comes Hamilton and Norris. They are equal now on points, 51 points each. And I think this is wide open. It will be very hard for Ferrari to keep the sort of the P2 in the Constructors' Championship, and also ultimately in the drivers' P3, P4 for them at the moment. But with, as I said, with how good the McLaren looks at the moment, it will be very hard for Ferrari. Ferrari have to step it up if they want to keep the same level as McLaren at the moment. So yeah, then Piastri, a couple of points, 8 points behind Norris. Then comes Verstappen, and Verstappen has jumped now. I think Behrman, who was previously number 7, and Max was P8, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, for Haas, I didn't mention Haas at all because this was not a good weekend for them. They didn't score any points, and they didn't bring any updates or upgrades for the car. So not a great weekend for them. But I believe that they should be bringing some updates to Canada, if I'm not mistaken. But and hopefully Haas can be more competitive there. And Gasly, yeah, with the crash of him in the main race, he only scored 1 point in sprint. So yeah, he is now in P9 with 16 points. Then comes Lawson, who also crashed out, and Colapinto now with this P7 finish, it has climbed to P11, and he is now he collected 6 more points, and yeah, he in total has now 7 points. So yeah, that's our top 11, and then comes Lindblad, Hajar, and it's a pity to see for Hajar because he has now a decent car, so he needs to start scoring points. And that's it, I guess, from the drivers. If we look, this is the situation, and of course we still have Perez, Stroll, Alonso, Bottas, and Hülkenberg, who has not scored a single point this year. If you look at the constructors, well, no surprises there. Of course, Mercedes is on the P1 with 180 points, and then comes Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, Alpine, and then Haas. And as I said, it will be hard for Ferrari to keep P2 if McLaren continue to develop like this. And in my opinion, McLaren will be a considerable force, and we'll see if they can take the fight to Mercedes, but to McLaren, to Ferrari, they definitely are doing that. And the last thing I want to take a look is telemetry, and I already looked at it through the qualifying sessions, but now I also in the race I want to take a look how it looks like, and this is from GP Tempo, a link in the description, of course. But I selected here 4 drivers, Norris, Antonelli, Verstappen, and Leclerc, and I selected them because they have, Antonelli and Norris have the same power unit, but Verstappen and Leclerc, they have different power units, and I just wanted to see how this power application throughout the year, throughout the race and lap, how it looks like. And we can see here that the super clipping in the race scenario actually is not as bad as it is still in the qualifying. If you want to see how it looked in the qualifying, you need to go to watch in my previous episode where I talked about the qualifying. But we see here also that that in the, as you see in this straight, or in this corner 10 or 10 between 10 and 11, they actually reach the peak here somewhere around this number 10, or in the middle of this turn, which, let's say, depending on the car, as still, as you see, 329, 928, and actually Ferrari is the slowest, 318. Maybe this is lap specific, I didn't check multiple laps, but and this is lap 50, by the way, yeah, so towards the end of the race. And we can see here that afterwards the application, the throttle application still is just to show that it is 100%. So meaning that the drivers is going flat out, but what happens is that they drop down in the speed. So from 329, what was it? Yes, to 315 something before they start braking. So still not as significant as I said in the qualifying, but still they drop some 14-15 kilometers per hour in the race, and yeah, it's still evident. So the super clipping is still there, and as if we take a look here in this straight between 16 and 17, the same, it's not as bad. So here also in the peak 327, for example, kilometers per hour, and then it drops to 320 right before the braking. So it's still 7 kilometers. So it's not as bad, because in the qualifying, I believe we saw some, 20 kilometers, this delta. Now in the race, it's only 7, but still it is there, and we can clearly see this curve. That this is what is happening. If for comparison, let's take a look. Let's select also, for example, let's take 2025, the same Miami Grand Prix. Let's take a race, and well, we can take Verstappen, for example. It doesn't matter much. Let's take also some lap 50, the same lap, and just for the sake of comparison, let's take also Norris. Also, let's take lap 50. And so if we take a look at the telemetry, how it looks in the race. So let's remove Leclerc, and let's remove Antonelli. So this is 2025. Let's take it white, and Norris for 2025. Let's put him green. So as you see here clearly, the curve is way different. Although the top speed in 2026 is higher, than they ever achieved in 2025. So top speed 328, but then it starts to drop off when in 2025 they kept accelerating, and then it seems that they have a little bit of lift from coast here. Maybe, yeah, towards the end they have a little bit before no, actually they don't. They go into slammed brakes right away. But so the curve was sort of upwards, and the same as you see here in this straight between 16 and 17, the same also the trajectory of the curve, that they keep accelerating, and then they break in 2026. There's they reach the top speed way sooner because of the electric power, and then they start to drop off a little bit. So the curves are way different, 2024 5 to 2026, and this is the evidence of the super clipping, which is still there when the driver still being at full throttle are start to lose speed, because the power goes into charging the battery. So, but as I have said before, this is the 2026. These are the regulations of 2026, and these are the power units of 2026. We just need to, let's say, accept it, and that's all. So, with that being said, I think we have very interesting championship ahead of us, because the teams are catching up to Mercedes, McLaren, also Red Bull is gaining. Ferrari, I can't tell at the moment, to be honest, if they are gaining, but hopefully they will. Yes, Mercedes are bringing now upgrades to Canada. We'll see how it looks like there, and how competitive now Mercedes will be in Canada, and maybe they will be again in the league of their own. But I think there are signs that the field is equaling out a little bit. So this is more interesting for us. This is more interesting for the championship. So let's see for Canada. Next race is Canada in what now? 2 weeks, and we'll see how this develops. And I think we have very interesting drivers and constructors championship ahead of us. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Stay safe, and see you after during the Canadian Grand Prix weekend. Thank you, and bye bye.